How much do you have? Okay, here we go. My audience is having so much fun tonight that they just keep talking. Okay, we've changed guests again. We've got 5 guests in all this evening from the Fort Bend Juvenile Probation Department. This is Steve Macko, and he is the Assistant Chief Juvenile Probation Officer. And so we're going to shift our focus again a little bit now and let Steve tell you some things about the nature of the programs that you have. Just what kind of options are there, and what do you do, and whatever you'd like to tell them.
All right. Thank you very much.
And you may recognize him from the tape you saw a while ago. He was on that tape toward the end.
All right. What I'd like to do is just kind of do an overview of the different programs that we have through the Juvenile Probation Department. First of all, these different programs that we have, we kind of categorize them into 2 different areas of what we call non-residential services and residential services. Every year we go out to and do an actual, what we call a procurement process, or actually a bid type of quoting process through our purchasing agent to actually get services to be provided under contract for our juvenile offenders. And this consists of what I mean by non-residential services is services such as family counseling, group counseling, drug education, drug counseling for families, group drug education counseling, parent education, psychiatric type services, psychiatric evaluations, psychological services. So we have a full gamut of different type programs and services we can provide the juvenile and the family. On the residential end, what I mean by that is we also contract with different entities. This year we have about 22 contracts with different residential care providers throughout the state of Texas, ranging in services from what we call emergency shelter, which would mean shelter care for a child, say that's a runaway or truant and has nowhere to go, that they couldn't actually stay locked up in detention for a long period of time because of federal mandates. That child could go into a shelter to just be safe, and for us to be working with the child and family to reintegrate that person back into the home, all the way to psychiatric hospitalization for a child that would be really severe. It could be actively suicidal, actively homicidal. We had one last night and over the weekend here, which took quite a few hours here of my sleep last night dealing with that type of situation. So that always comes about. And anywhere in between, as the judge mentioned earlier, we do have other residential programs such as wilderness camps, vocational training type programs where they actually live there full residentially. And we also have a residential in-home boot camp program, which you'll be hearing from pretty soon, which is it's kind of a quasi-residential where they actually live at home, but it's a very structured program that we also have where they go throughout the day. That's kind of giving you an overview of the different services. I'd like to kind of tell you how we actually program these juveniles. They come to us, again, 1,843 last year came to us for different type of offenses ranging from truancy to runaway. We didn't have any murders last year, but I think there were some attempted homicides that we did deal with last year. So it's a gamut of different type of either what we call children in need of supervision services, misdemeanor type of shoplifting and thefts, to burglaries, felony offenses, to the more serious aggravated type of offenses. Again, when they come into our system, we have to evaluate that child. That 1,843 referrals I mentioned, over 600 of those, or almost half of them, came through detention and were detained for periods of time. And upon the detention process, we feel very confident that we need to take a picture look at that child to develop type of program to best fit that child's needs and the parents' needs. So on the vast majority of those initial referrals, we do what we call an assessment. We get a provider, such as one that's going to be speaking here, updated, and to actually do an assessment on that child to see where's he come from, why is he going and stealing this food out of this store, why is he going and having a gun on school campus, you know, what's his risk to the community if he's released. We have to report all these things back to the court, to the judge, to kind of give him a feeling of what's really going on with that child in the family system. So we take a real good picture of what we call assessments on the upfront. Could be a family assessment, could be a drug assessment to try to really address this. You know, the parents will tell us, well, he comes in high, he's drunk to school. The school will say, you know, they really suspect some involvement. So what type of assessment is really bared upon our interview and what is reflected in that. We also have programs, what we call first offender program, which means a child we don't think that really needs to be ingrained in the criminal justice system and having to go through a year or more of probation services can actually go into a program of a 5-week nature that, for example, someone that came in that would steal a camera from Target might go through our either shoplifting program, first offender. It might just be a minor thing. There might be some underlying issues that he has, some that come out in that, and that's all that child needs. Because the vast majority of these different referrals that come through our system do not come back again. The recidivism rate is not that high in the juvenile justice system as it is in the adult system.
That's encouraging.
Another program we have is, like I said, first offender shoplifting. We have informal adjustment service, which means that a child and a parent and the judge and the district attorney and the probation department can supervise his child for a 6 months period of time and place him on probation rules that he has to do, and the parents have to do certain things to abide by that contract. And if they abide by all the conditions of that contract as far as reporting into an officer, go to school, not violate the law anymore, report in as far as time and curfew, and they do certain things, and there's actually not a petition that will be filed or a petition that's filed by the district attorney's office actually charging them to where they have to go before a juvenile court can be dismissed at that level. And that, again, is what we call a diversion system out of the program.
Could you explain how you monitor the non-residential juveniles? How do you know that they're coming and going the way they're supposed to be?
Oh,
what control do you have over if they're non-residential?
I believe you probably be asking like if the child's on probation status, how do we monitor that child? If a child is placed on probation, we have an internal what we call risk and needs assessment that's done on every child, and basically what it does is it ranks them as how high risk or low risk they are, and by how they rank on that scale basically mandates how often that child needs to come in to report to that officer. It goes from a minimum of once a month, and it can go to a maximum of a weekly or even more than once a week, depending on, again, like you say, risk, his potential for reoffending, and it's a very accurate tool that we use to tell us as far as monitoring. There's other devices such as, I'm sure you've heard electronic monitoring devices. We also have that's used on juveniles. It's also used quite extensively by the court on the more serious juveniles that need to be monitored more closely. The officers are mandated.
You just lock a tracking device on them, or
on their leg here.
Okay.
I think I'll have Captain Norwood also tell us more about that when he comes up here.
Okay, we're not doing Star Trek implants or anything.
Not yet, but they've come a long way on their monitoring devices. They used to be big and very bulky as far as manageable, and now they're getting smaller and smaller. And I understand now there's the wave of the future is that they might even be able to monitor you like by satellite eventually, and actually bounce this off the system to know where you are at all times.
That really turns some of them into little stars. Let me get Ginger and then Ed.
Will that be available for parents of teens?
Did you hold your mic down? She wanted to know if that'd be available for parents
of teenagers.
Edna.
Okay, my question for you, I don't live in Fort Bend County, I live in HISD, well in A-Leaf, but my younger sister was caught shoplifting, and personally I feel she just got a slap on the wrist because she's just supposed to do 20 hours of community service. She's not supposed to do anything else. There's no counseling or anything involved. Do you know if HISD has any of those programs, or would there be a way for her to participate in these programs? Because I don't...
Okay, let's rephrase it and find out what Fort Bend would do in a similar, because these folks are not from HISD.
Well, no, I know that. I'm just asking if they know of any programs that are available in HISD, or is there a way for her to be in these kind of programs with Fort Bend? Since
do you take transfers?
Well, actually, in the juvenile system, that's a good question. In the juvenile system, there is what we call dual jurisdiction, which means that the offense can be handled either in the county where it occurs or in the county where the child resides, which is sometimes different. But if this actual child you mentioned lives in Harris County and it happened in Harris County, then they would have the sole jurisdiction, meaning that they would have to handle the case and it couldn't be transferred to Fort Bend County unless they actually family moved to our county and she was on some form of probation services. So if a child, for that example, got caught with shoplifting. Either 20 hours community service is not necessarily a bad thing to happen for them, because that 20 hours is
Picking up trash on a hot Saturday could get old.
yeah, different types of service that can really get to them and actually make an impact to make them realize what they did was something wrong.
Well, I mean, she hasn't. They just told us that she had to do 20 hours of community service. They never specified where it had to be done or anything like that. So as of yet, she hasn't done it yet. So I don't know, where we should take her or anything like that. She's not a bad child. I think she just did it for attention because we have a lot of problems at home. That's why I'm wondering, types of counseling and stuff like that, which I'll ask him later. But I'm just, curious about this other program.
Okay, you don't know whether the systems are analogous, much whether Harris County tends to do. Well, we think we've got Fort Bend here because we believe we've got a positive prototype here, but we'll give fair time to Harris County. Phone me, folks. Call Instructional Television. Let us know you're out there.
Another question.
Jackie.
How many students do you have per probation officer? Is there a limit, or is it just however they come in?
Right now, we have about 400 active probationers within Fort Bend County that are on probation supervision, and that's divided up between 4 field probation officers and a couple of specialized caseload probation officers. The average caseload runs between about 40 to 80, 90 cases. Actual officers that supervise children are what we call field probation officers. Their caseload that I just looked at was probably about 60 to 80 cases on the average. And they're the ones that actually supervise these children, both at home, at school, and in different types of settings.
Do the field ones take care of the more violent, or of the non-residential, or how does that work? Any certain pattern?
I would say the field, we have a specialized caseload in the field which we call ISP, which is intensive supervision probation. And that officer, mainly his caseload is a lot of the more serious type of offenders, and that's why they're monitored much closer. 2 to 3 contacts a week with the family. They come in to report. They do counseling, group counseling, both the child and the family do that on a weekly basis, and they're monitored close. A lot of them will have electronic monitoring devices to make sure they're not coming and going as they please and stay home when they're supposed to. So that officer will...
Is that a question or a comment? Hold your mic down. Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but when you finish, I have a question.
Okay, I think I was about finished with that.
You have other programs to tell us about?
Certainly do. I think I left off on the informal. I was trying to go kind of through our system and the progression of different services that we had. I was talking about the 6 months informal probation. Now we have formal probation, which you've heard what the judge has explained to you what he does in court. Formal probation now can be extended through the child's 18th birthday, and on all cases now that are ordered into boot camp, they are extended through their 18th birthday to be monitored. So if a child comes in at 14, actually they can be placed on 4 years probation now. That's a new legislative change that recently happened. It used to be for 1 year periods of time, and you had to go back to court and extend those for periods of time until their 18th birthday. The next type of progression there was, you were a little bit ahead of me, and ISP is another type of progression there, which is a more formalized caseload. Boot camp is an interim that we like to place, and we actually got this grant to provide an option to actually that these children would not have to go outside their home or be placed way up into a facility where their parents really couldn't be as involved with them. So boot camp, as we use it, is as an interim to where they could stay at home, they could be monitored closely and supervised closely, but the parent, where a lot of the problems will stem from, a lot of control problems, can be worked with more intensively and resolved at the family level. So that's the concept of the boot camp, is to also defer some of the residential costs, which are very costly, whereas the boot camp, as you will see, is probably can be run at a third of the cost as a full-time residential program by placing a child outside the home. And we do, as I mentioned before, we do have contracts. If the child does need to be placed outside the home, we recommend to the court different residential programs we contract with, and the court order would place him or her into some residential care for rehabilitation and treatment that we contract with. The next kind of progression from that, again, which the judge answered when another lady over here asked the question about when do you stop? When do you stop trying? Well, when a child goes from residential to residential and is finally showing a pattern that it's not the program that's failing, it's the child that's failing, and they really don't have an attitude to want to change their behavior, and it shows over and over again, then unfortunately the next step would be TYC or the state commitment to the Texas Youth Commission, and that's what would be recommended on that particular child, where they can remain up until their 21st birthday, which the legislature gave them the authority to do. There's also two other type of different judicial processes too, called certification and determinate sentencing, and these two processes are used by the court and the district attorney's office for the more serious and aggravated nature type crimes, which we previously discussed. Certification is a process where a 15 or 16-year-old child that would commit something like an aggravated assault, aggravated robbery, could be murder, attempted murder, could be actually passed on into the adult system by a judicial process by the court, and saying, no, I don't think we can handle this. He's doing stuff too serious for a juvenile. He knows what he was doing. So let's go ahead and have this process and see exactly if he had the sophistication of adult, and that process goes down and he's passed on to the adult system and faces the actual adult time periods and prison time that an adult would require. The last thing that I mentioned too is determinate sentencing, which is for there's 6 different offenses under our Texas Family Code which a child could be placed under determinate sentencing. And what this does is it's kind of in between the two. It doesn't exactly send them off to prison right away, but it places them in the TYC custody and then actually be transferred up to prison up to 40 years for certain type of crimes and offenses. Yes? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
The first one is, do you all have any kind of community service programs?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a very good question, because that's along with the continuum of services and the different type of probation services that we do have a community service program that was mentioned before, that some relative you say was ordered to community service at an unknown location. We don't do that. The actual court orders a certain number of hours, anywhere from usually 20 to 200 hours of community service for probationers to perform, but we have a contract with the American Red Cross that does that service for us, and they monitor the child and make sure the sites are obtained and available, and take them actually on group projects and programs to make sure that that service is carried out.
Okay. You have a second question?
Some places collect money and give it back to somebody. Do y'all do that?
Do we do that? That's a very good question too. That I believe what you're hinting at is what we call restitution, and restitution is ordered by the court and is collected through the Juvenile Probation Department and given back to the victims in the community. I believe it was close to almost $100,000 or more last year that was collected through Fort Bend County through the court system of restitution and given back to the victims of, usually those are the more violent crime victims. In addition, money collection too is allocated by probation services too. There is up to a $15 amount for probation services too that's collected by the family, that's given to the probation department to use for additional youth services.
And we've got some questions building up on this side, so Melanie, did we pass you by, or is your stuff?
The TYC situation.
Yes.
Is it like the adult prisons where if you get a year sentence, you may stay 6 months, or do you stay the entire sentence? Do you go in front of a board halfway through, or how does that work?
When you're committed to the Texas Youth Commission by the courts, the judge actually does that commitment. It's based upon, again, what the crime that you're adjudicated for and disposed of, the seriousness of that crime, and whether it is, they categorize it into different categories, such as they call it a general offender, they call a more serious offender or violent offender type A and type B. A general offender does carry a minimum length of stay. What they mean is 6 months in the TYC facility. So they have to maintain themselves at least for 6 months in a facility of TYC for a general offender offense. A type A and a type B would be the more violent ones. The type B is a 12-month, a 1-year mandatory requirement that they maintain themselves in a TYC facility, which is a lockdown, secure facility. So there is no what you would call good time, or like you serve 10 for 1 and all that. There's mandatory requirements that is set out by the TYC policy, where they have to actually go there and serve out their whole length of stay. And the type A offender, which is the very serious one, which is your homicide and so forth, have up to a 48-month length of stay, up to 4 years in a TYC facility.
Okay, I'm going to take 2 more quick questions, then we're going to shift again.
From the way you said maintain themselves, it sounds like are you saying that they could stay, say they were sentenced for 1 year, but it sounds like you're saying they had to maintain themselves. Are you saying that they're like having to have certain standards they have to meet while there, and if they don't, for the period they weren't meeting that standard, they now have to extend that for that, if there was a month they didn't follow the rules, they have a month more to serve of doing it right?
Yes. What they would do is, for example, a violent offender, most of the violent offenders are handled at Giddings State School, which is in Giddings, Texas. And say, for example, they went there for attempted murder, and they'd have to stay there for minimum, I think that's 24 months, 2 years, mandatory. During that period of time, they have a certain set program that they have to follow. They have a capital offender program there at that facility too, which they have to participate in and do certain rules. They have to go to school there, education-wise, follow the rules and regulations, listen to staff, maintain certain grades, or at least attempt to maintain good grades, not run off from the facility. Toward the very end of at their length of stay, they might get some sort of like a furlough or home stays, but that's usually not till the very end. So if they screw up in any of those areas, or they go out and they use drugs, or they're assaultive or violent in nature, that can tack on additional length of time, like you're saying. So they do, even though they're not just imprisoned and locked up, they're still programmed, and they still get educational services, and they have to follow certain rules to get out.
Okay, Jackie, did you have a question, or did we
Yeah, I
pass
wanted to
it
know, did you say that the juvenile, the one particular juvenile has to work to give restitution back to the victim, or is it a cumulative thing with the entire program, where they gather up money to pay back victims? I misunderstood what
It's
you
all
were
done
saying.
on a case-by-case basis. For example, if a child goes and burglarizes your house, and you show that you've lost $1,000 in this burglary, then what happens is that the court will take that under consideration.
But it's that child that's responsible,
themselves,
not the program.
not the program.
Okay, well, we're going to shift here. Thank you very much. This is enlightening. We appreciate it. You can help interrogate the rest of these guys in a minute.
All right.
Okay, we're going to
Thanks for
get our boot camp instructor up here. Captain Norwood, if you'll just come on up. Make yourself comfortable. This is Captain Andrew Norwood, and he is the boot camp senior drill instructor. And all the moms in the audience, come on over here. All the moms in the audience have been waiting for him to get up here so they can interrogate him. But you get first crack at this. What is it you do? And how do you do it?
What I do is, once a child is turned over to me, he's usually turned over to me for 6 months. We take that young man, and what we want to do is change the way he look. We want to change the way he talk. We want to change the way he walk, the way he wears clothes.
Do you get women too, or do you just do guys?
Right now we're doing just guys right now. In the future we're looking at doing females also, because they are committing crime also. But what we do, we cut the hair, first thing. Give him a new look, and we keep it cut. We issue him a sweat uniform we have right now, and a pair of tennis shoes. We issue him 2 pair. We also talk to his parents so they know what to expect. We have a monitor, electronic monitor that Mr. Mako mentioned. He wears that 24 hours a day. When he's with us, the monitor is he's not monitored. He's with us from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. That's 5 days a week. Saturday and Sundays doing community service, which we do.
Is this like an outdoor camp that you're in, or are you in a building? Physically, what kind of place is
Right
this?
now, we're in an alternative school
Okay.
that's the county have, and all of our kids go there. Also, kids go there that have been put out of the regular school. We have right now about 25, 26 students that go to that school right now. We have 10 students that's enrolled in the boot camp. We could take up to 20, 25 students in boot camp. We have 10 right now.
Okay, and what's your goal besides creating a new look?
Our goal is to create pretty much a new individual, change the way he do business, change the way his attitude is toward authority, get along with his peers, be a successful student in the community, and that's our intent.
Jackie?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you deal with it if they don't want to cooperate? I'm sure you have some that just simply don't want to cooperate. How do you get them into the group without disrupting the entire the rest of the group?
First we have initially when we started the program, we started with 7 students. Working with 7 new students who had never come in contact with authority figure that demanded that they do certain things. It was pretty hard, but we was persistent in getting them to do what we want to do. If one act up, we would separate that one individual from the crowd, deal with him, and getting him to do what we wanted him to do. And usually they do what we want them to do.
I mean, are
Then
we
we put
talking
him
drop
back.
and do push-ups or?
Yes, ma'am. Drop and do push-up, flood kicks, any type of exercise that we want them to do. These young men were very unruly, and
They thought they were in charge.
They thought they was in charge until they ran into us.
We're very encouraged by this.
But right now, what we do with a young man, when we know we're going to get him, he's going to come to us. He's going to go to court, and he and his family are going to get awarded to us for 6 months. We have a day on Friday we call Motivation Day. And what we do is we put that young man through Motivation Day, and that's a 12-hour a work day where he comes, and from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon, he do extensive PT, whatever we tell him to do, and he do it all day long. He get lunch breaks, he get restroom breaks, he get breakfast breaks. Other than that, he works all day long, some type of exercise all day long. Whether he might stand up against a pole for a long period of time out there while we hollering and tell him what we want him to do and what's going to happen to him if he don't do it. So he really don't know what's going to happen to him. So he pretty much do what we want him to do. We have never had a problem with a kid.
I wouldn't mess with you, Captain Norwood.
With that, do you ever have a situation where they first of all, do you let them interact with each other in that group, in that classroom, and also do they ever try to create their own hierarchy within themselves?
During motivation, they do not interact with one another. We give them permission to talk when not to talk. But in the boot camp, in-home boot camp, we allow them to intercommunicate with one another because they got to learn how to get along with their peers. However, we know that every now and then problems arise, and while they communicating and getting along with one another. But we step up and we put the fire out real quick, and there's a repercussion for everything that happens. If a kid want to fight another kid, then we have something we call we send them back through Motivation Day. They do not want to go back through Motivation Day. I mean, it's not a good thing to go through, But, it's good to motivate a kid into turning them around. But we don't physically harm the kid or nothing. But they don't know that. In their mind, they think we may, and we tell them we may, but we don't harm them at all.
Karen.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
so should I not let my 18-year-old watch this tape Wednesday night? I mean, are you giving out any secrets they shouldn't know?
Pretty much, the kids we usually get don't look at this type of channel.
Don't watch TV.
Channel 8.
Okay, we don't have to worry about this audience then.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
this is pretty close to military while they're there.
Yes, ma'am. Not only physical training goes on, but drill, marching, standing at the position of attention, doing facing movements. These kids have to learn all of that. They also have to know how to, we put each, we start putting them in leadership positions, because a lot of these kids have leadership abilities, but no one have never challenged it, and so that's what we do. We try to challenge, and some kids are more of a leader than other kids. And what we do, we take that kid and we put him in charge of maybe 5 kids and tell him he's responsible for these 5 kids. And we don't jump on these 5 kids for doing wrong. We get on him. So what he do, it's sort of like, so what we do, what that does is get him to look at from a parent perspective, from a teacher's perspective. I'm responsible for these 5 kids, and they are messing up. What I got to do to fix it, So he works at trying to fix it. Sometimes he asks, "What can I do?" And we give him a little instruction on what to do. But we don't let them get too far out of line before we step in and straighten them out.
Okay, you got
Yes,
a
ma'am, you
question?
got a question.
Nancy. Okay, well, Nancy and then Edna.
Are there mostly first-time offenders in boot camp, or are these ones that have been repeated offenders wind up there?
The kids we got in-home boot camp are usually the kids that are getting ready to be placed. And so instead of placing these kids, they assign them to boot camp. And in boot camp also, the mother, the father, or the guardian, whoever is responsible for that kid, they are placed in in-home boot camp also in a way. Because on Thursday nights, we have parenting classes that Mr. Black gives, and he helps the parents in teaching them new techniques on how to parent, because sometimes parents don't know how to be persistent in getting the job done. They don't know how to give an order, a clear order, and so that a kid can understand what they want. There's not a doubt in that kid's mind what they want, and be persistent in making that kid do what they want them to do, without losing control. What our intent is also is to get the parent or the guardian control again, because somewhere along the line they have lost control in that household. And we want to help them get control back. So, and 6 months later, once we get that child, 6 months later, we turn them back over to their parent. Hands off, our hands are off, but that kid may still be in a field, assigned to a field probationer for until they're 18 years old. But our hands, boot camp hands, are off, and their parents should have control back into that household again.
Okay, we need to go this way to Edna.
Okay, 3 real quick questions. 1, what is your background, as far as your own background, as far as teaching the children or being
Did you
with
go
the
through the
children?
Marines?
2, do you see a lot of problems with self-esteem in these kids, and do you have any kind of classes in your boot camp or whatever that deals with that? I can't
background.
think of a 3rd one.
Let me. Okay. Okay, you can hold that 3rd one if it pop back up.
We'll take turns here.
But my background was I did 20 years in the military. I was a drill sergeant.
Which branch?
The Army.
The Army. Okay. Everybody's wondering.
And I was infantry while I was in the Army. I worked in Fort Bend County. They have a program called STAR Program. When they initially started it, I was working up there as one of the drill sergeants up there. That was in Montgomery County. And Mr. McAfee offered me a better deal, and I took it.
Good, Mr. McAfee.
Okay.
Self-esteem, is that
the self-esteem problem. Most of the kids do have a low self-esteem, and either they've been talked down to, talked at, and not talked to. And so what our intent is to let them know that they are somebody, that they can be somebody, no
They're
matter
not
what.
in charge, but
That's
they are
right.
special.
That's right. They're not in charge. They're not an adult, so they cannot act like an adult act. They cannot tell people where to go. So, and that's all in the self-esteem. You know, if you feel good about yourself, then people around you feel good. And that's what we try to do. We try to make them feel good. If a kid say he cannot do something, we force him to do what he say he cannot do. And then after he's finished, then we talk about, hey, thought you say you could not do that. You know, a light goes on in his head, we hope, that would let him know that, hey, you know, I can accomplish this. You know, some of them could not stay in school. They in school every day now, don't get in trouble because there is a alternative thing what happen to them if they do get in trouble. So, you know, well, we talks about that every now and then. You know, some of those kids didn't go to school. You know, they were skipping school, got in trouble while they was in school. Not only our kids, the in-home boot camp kids, but the other kids that have been, the court have sent to the school that we work at, the other kids. I mean, they love it. We have a young lady who wanted to join boot camp, a couple of them, you know, because they like the structure. They like, you know, we give them leadership positions, and we allow them to march other students. They know what they want to do, they do it, and they do it well. And they feel good about themselves.
Hey, let's see, Ginger had a question. Okay, if it's short, I'm going to move around. Is this a follow-up or a different?
It's somewhat what he was just talking about females. If I was asking him during the break if they did any tours for anyone, or, you know, for kids or whatever who are potential problems, who are facing that.
Yeah, usually what we have is motivation day. I told you we have potential problem children. Usually probation officers come and see me. You know, right now we have slots for about 10 of them each Friday, and we have a form that the parents sign, you know, releasing us of all responsibilities. But
okay, let's hold on that.
They show up at
about
5:45 to 6:30 in 6 in the afternoon, and we work them all day, you know, and we have a pretty good success rate on that. You know, we don't get a bunch of returners.
We're going to shift over to Melanie next.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about that. After your boot camp, do you see most of the time a big turnaround, or do they leave and kind of, you know?
You mean after in-home boot camp? Since we just started February the 6th. It's rarely new right now.
So you don't know yet if they'll be returning, but you're pretty sure they won't.
I'm sure they won't return. I have to be positively sure that they won't return because you know, we try to make it as hard as possible to them. You know, at the same time, we realize that they are kids, they're not adults, but we know how far we can push them. We have a young man that weighs 288 that, you know, he ran and walked 4 miles sometime in the morning. You know, sometimes we required him to run 4 miles, and he did it, you know. Everyone else was in the band ready to go, but he made it. And, you know, that's how, you know, if we give him a mission, you know, even if everyone else has to wait for that mission to be completed, everyone has to complete the mission. You know, so that makes him feel good, you know.
Did you have a question, or we passed it by?
Ages for boot camp.
Right now, our ages is from 14 to 17. Well, 14 to 16. We do not take 17-year-olds as of now. And we really don't want for 17-year-olds, to be honest. We want them, if the ages change, personally, I would wish they would go down instead of going up for in-home boot camp. You know, but right now we have 14 to 16-year-old, and they doing great. Every one of those kids, when we initially got the 7 kids, they did not come happily. They was very unhappily, you know, coming there, blaming everyone else because they was there. But right now, pretty much all those kids are feeling good about themselves. You know, they pretty much like the routine.
Okay. What advice would you give to the parents out there so these kids never make it to you in terms of clear instructions, and what kind of communication techniques can they use that will make it better?
The first thing I would tell a parent is that what you do in front of your kids is a bigger teacher than what you think. If you say don't do a certain thing and you are doing it, then they really don't hear what you're saying. Most kids learn from a visual standpoint of view. They see and they learn from looking. And if you are saying, son, it's not good to smoke marijuana, but you're smoking marijuana, he have seen marijuana in the household, then he gonna smoke marijuana. What you're telling him really do not go home. If you say don't drink, he gonna drink because he see you drink. If you say don't use certain type of language, because most kids we initially got, they curse like, I wouldn't say sailors. But, I mean, they use, pretty bad language. And they learn, one kid told me, what do you expect, sir? That's all I ever heard, and he heard it, in his community and at home. So what I would tell parents is, watch what you do more than what you say. But if you give a kid instruction, be clear on what instructions you're giving them. And pretty much do a follow-up. If you tell Johnny to do a certain thing, then check on Johnny. That's your house, not Johnny's house. So if you the parent there, be the parent. You have authority to check Johnny's room. Don't just assume Johnny's doing good because Johnny had not showed up down at the juvenile department. Go in there and check his stuff out. Look around in there. That's your domain. He might have a pistol or something hid up on a mattress. Go in there and check it. Let him know that's what you're doing, because then he'll get to thinking, well, Mama's checking under my bed. I won't bring nothing in here, And but you got to do. A parent has to do follow-up. Go to the school, find out exactly what's going on with Johnny in school. Don't assume that they're going to call you because he's going to get in trouble. When he get in trouble, they might not call you immediately. It might be he might have had 10 referrals before you got notified. So if you go down there periodically, find out what's going on with him, then first the teacher know that you're concerned. So they're going to be more apt to call you when something happens.
Seems to be a lot of power struggle between parents and their kids, between teachers and students.
That's right.
And just firm language, direct eye contact, reasserting your position.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly.
Jackie?
I wish you'd go to the schools and teach some of the teachers, or at least they'd have the authority to do this, because I've seen specifically in some of the high schools out in there, that the teacher could say anything, stand up, and they'll just either give them a hand signal or tell them off, or they really can't do anything. But my question is, how do you get the child, or how long does it take for the child to finally open up to talk to you? Do they ever open up and just really spill their guts to you? Because it seems like they're all so pent up with anger, and they don't even know what they're angry at,
Yes, ma'am. Usually during our motivation day, which started at 6 in the morning. Yes, ma'am.
Every parent needs a motivation day.
Yes, ma'am.
Saturday.
Around about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they ready to tell on anybody. They ready to get everything they got off of them, what all they did or what they was thinking about doing, who was trying to instruct them to do something, they were willing to tell it, and they do. And we listen to them, and we share that information with their probation officer. Some information, we have to, we share it with their parents, if it's dealing with their parent. But we share all the information with the probation officer. So if something happen to come up that's criminal in nature, we definitely want their probation officer to know about it. you know. But they tell it all. I mean, I've learned some stuff from what they have told me. Because, you know, with the drug deal, you know, they tell you how they take it, you know. And, you know, some of it take it through their eyes and stuff. And some certain type of drugs. I had never heard that before until a kid told me that, you know. I mean, he told me his life history on all the drug things that he had did, you know. But, you know, but with a regular parent, to regain that trust from that kid, it takes a lot of work. And that's where a counselor comes in at, in helping that parent regain that trust in the kid. But initially, you know, because I'm a parent, and I have a 20-year-old and 10-year-old, and I believe you have to start when they crawling, when you have them in your arm. You nurture them from there to you know, to they're 18 and out of the house, you know. But
did yours leave at 18? Mine
no,
didn't.
no, ma'am. No, ma'am. That did not happen.
Maybe we need to get the therapist up here. Okay, I bet they could keep questioning you, but I want us to get Raleigh up here. Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much. And if you all have another question for him, you can ask it. Mr. Blackwell, come on up here. He's waited patiently until this time, but he's expecting an assault from the audience, I think. This is Mr. Raleigh Blackwell, and he is a marriage and family therapist. And how do you fit into this picture?
I provide clinical services on several different levels for the Fort Bend Juvenile Probation Department. I've been working with offenders for over 10 years, and I'm a contract provider for this entity. I provide services at the first offender level. Mr. Macko talked a while ago about the first offender program. I provide those services, as well as some clinical interviews to assess them and help them with recommendations on level of violence the child might be involved in, or a potential violence threat to the community themselves, as well as clinical needs. Also involved in several other programs, including the boot camp program, providing clinical services out there. They've pretty much hashed out everything that's going on. I'd be better off just taking questions.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think they've got some for you. Who wants to start?
I'd let someone else go first.
Oh, okay. Darren back there. And this is the voice
I'll
of
say
West
something.
Houston who showed up in the flesh.
I'm here in the
tonight.
flesh.
This is Darren.
I know when I grew up, I saw a, you know, the documentary of Scared Straight. And I was wondering if they have ever used that type of method to where they've actually brought children into a real prison, and those prisoners goes face to face with them. And I remember watching that film and coming out with the impression that I would never ever be caught in jail again.
There is a program that the department refers to. I'm not a part of that program, but I can tell you a little about it. It's called the TDC Operation Outreach, and it's a program where very many of the probationers are taken by one of the deputies and several probation officers, and it's coordinated, and it's a day-long program. My feedback that I get from the kids in therapy that have gone through it is very powerful. They say that they've come face to face with these prisoners. They see what prison life is about. They're out in the fields working. They'll show you the blisters on their hands. It's a tremendously powerful program. One of the other gentlemen probably comment a lot more extensively than I could. I just see the effect, and I see it working very well.
I have one more question too. What about I know the parent involvement, like even at like the elementary school level, where does, you know, what can we do to get parents more involved at a younger level? My wife teaches a school where, you know, in 22 children per class, and you know, you get about 12 of the, you know, parents come in, and you know, what can we do to get the other parents, the other 12, to come out and get involved, you know, to take control of their children at that young age?
The only way you can get somebody involved in something like that is find out what's important to them. To a certain extent, people want to be involved and they don't want to be involved. They want to be involved to the extent that it makes their life better, and they don't want to be involved when it gets to be costing them something. If you can, as a parent or as a member of a community, find a way to engage a parent that's not going to cost them too much, and what they put into it's going to be worth something, then you can change things. And I think that's the way a number of our community services and our programs that we offer to the community are based on. I mean, obviously, they have to be successful, they have to be motivational, and they have to be something that's doable.
Okay, good. Nancy?
It was mentioned earlier that a lot of these offenders or juveniles that appear before the court or in the detention center don't have male role models in their lives, and I can see where the boot camp would help them with the authority. Have you been very successful with any programs, to give these boys that might need a male role model, like I don't know if it's Big Brothers or almost have to be something tougher than that, but are there any programs which help these children have role models?
First thing is that these kids all have male role models, just not good ones. I mean, you look at the structure of gangs and the structure that kids put in their peer groups, and it's all to recapitulate the family. I mean, they set up their own little family to meet these needs. Now, I guess a better question is, how do you give them positive male role models? I know the probation department's involved with a volunteer community court volunteer program. They have a number of very strong male role models in the department as far as officers, detention staff, so on and so forth. And the boot camp program also offers these young men good role models. Well, I say young men, young ladies need good male role models also. And then there's a number of people here that are available, as well as community service programs.
Are you indicating that most of the children that you see have parents that have been offenders?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't know that that's true or not.
No,
I'm sorry if I gave that impression. I don't have any data to correspond to that.
What kind of, and I know this is really hard, but what kind of advice would you give to me as a sister who has, I mean, I really have really bad parents, horrible parents if you listen to any of our other classes, but what kind of advice would you give to me to help me open up lines of communication with my sisters? Because they see me more as a mother figure than as a sister, because I've always taken care of them and with the things that are going on now.
To communicate things to these guys?
To be, I guess, more like a sister and a friend to him than a mother, to try to take myself out of that role. What kind of advice, or what would maybe be some?
I would say that if you really want, if you want to work with your sisters, the best way to do that is to find out what's important to them and communicate to them the things that are going to help them do this better. Now, usually it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have something that's important to you, and they're going to have something that's important to them. Now, it's usually the same things. You just come about it from your perspective. You want to talk to them in a way that makes them see that your ideas are very salient to them, and that they want to change to be like you, and then set a good example. And as Captain Norwood said, you got to walk it and not just talk it. I mean, you have to be able to show them that you're willing to do what you want them to do. And that's true if you're a parent, or if you're a sibling, or if you're just a friend.
Nancy?
When you do the program for the parents in the boot camp or whatever that is, the Thursday night, is that kind of a tough love type thing, teaching them how to love their kids in a way that, gets the respect or the results that they want?
A lot of these parents are past the simple, I don't want to say simple, tough love, indicating that it's not a complex approach, but these folks need the rudimentary skills that it's going to take to solve the power struggles they're involved in, how to communicate with their kids, because these aren't parents at the first of the cycle of problems. They're so advanced that their children are about to be taken from their home. So we go back to basics and we talk about the real fundamentals of parenting. We hope to engage them in helping each other. Some of them are more advanced, some of them have different strengths. But basically there's some things that you need to get to that these folks have missed a lot of times. Or they haven't tried in so long they don't know if they work. Different communication techniques and so forth.
Do you have to work with the child one-on-one for several sessions before you can get the parent to interact with them? Because sometimes they probably won't even listen to the parent if they're not obeying them. Or
Not
do you
necessarily.
bring them in together right away?
Every situation is different. I've had parents that you don't have to see their kids. You can talk with the parents. You give the parents a new way of doing business, and they change. The kid changes. I've had some kids that talking to the parents doesn't do any good. I mean, and somewhere in between there, every child lies. That they're going to need some point where you're talking with the kid and the parent in the same room so that you can get a shared language. But there's no hard and fast rule of this many sessions equals this much success.
Can you explain what's happening when you have a normal, reasonably well-behaving child and then they hit puberty and they suddenly start breaking, the big rebellion thing kicks in. They start breaking the curfew rules. They start lying through their teeth about where they're going. These are model children until the hormones kick in.
Well, there's a number of theories as to the basic behavior that goes along with adolescence, including delinquent behavior. Anything from not being able to express their feelings and acting those feelings out to possibly corresponding behavior on the parent's part, where the parent may or may not be adjusting to the changes the kid's going through. There's peer things that go on. There's chemical things that happen along with the hormones. Your body's going through tremendous changes, and that might also be a factor.
What's a parent to do?
The thing that I tell parents on every single level that's consistent is you got to know your child. If I have a parent that comes in and tells me, "Do you think my child's using drugs?" then probably so. I mean, if you don't know, then you got a problem. If you're watching your child, every single psychiatric disorder that I can think of has some sort of indication as a symptom of. One of the symptoms may be change in appetite, change in sleep, change in attitude, change in mood. And when you notice these changes, you can bet something's going on. If you don't know your child, you're not going to notice the changes.
Karen, did you have a question?
Well, the particular research I'm doing for my paper, of course, has been about underachieving in school. And all the things seems to tie into very strongly into the family, but it's also suggesting that, that starts building up as frustration. And, of course, they said, so it seems to be. And do you find a correlation between, say, people having problems in school and people developing problems as far as finding themselves in the juvenile system?
If you look at psychological testing, and Mr. Macko may have better statistics than I do, I would see a preponderance of children with learning disabilities that are going to correspond to juvenile court activity, a lot of depression and other psychiatric disorders that necessarily lead them to antisocial or illegal activities. And I would imagine, and like I said, I don't have any research to bear this out, but I would imagine you see a whole lot of that, which would translate into poor work in school.
Nancy?
What do you say to the mom who has, let's say, a 13 or 14-year-old who hasn't known his father, and she's working long hours trying to make a living, and the kid just will not listen to her? I heard her mother say, "I can't do anything with him." And what do you say to a mother like that who cares about her child but is in a really tough situation?
The situation of being a single parent in any capacity is going to change a child. The parents a lot of times ask, "Well, does my divorce make a difference? I'm divorced, don't have a father involved. Does that make a difference? My child he's never seen his other parent. In whatever capacity there's a single parent there. Yes, that makes a difference. I mean, anytime there's another party involved, whether they're present or not, it's going to change the dynamic of the relationship. If there's a father that's not there, that sends a lot of messages to the child. All of these messages are inferred. The child has to say, "Okay, my dad's not here. Why? Well, I must not be good enough." Teenagers particularly, are real self-focused. They can't see the global picture of maybe someone being unable to deal with stress, maybe not being of sufficient character to stay around and be involved in their family for whatever reason, maybe not even knowing that the family exists. And the kid focuses internally. And with that internal focus, they're going to have some poor behavior, some antisocial, some oppositional behavior that goes along with that. And it's going to be real hard for the parent that's there to control this behavior. In addition, this parent comes against a child that's acting out, and the only safe relationship they have, you have these issues of abandonment of the parent that's not there. You got a parent that is there, that's stable, so who are you going to take it out on? You're going to take it out on the one that's not going to run off, because you know for sure she's going to be there, she's always been there. And it's a safe thing for them to do. It's not right. It's just kind of what happens. To her, I would say that she needs a support system over the parents so she doesn't take this too personally. When this gets to, when your whole involvement here is your personal fulfillment, which we see with a lot of parents, my child has to fulfill me or else I'm not going to get that fulfillment, then it changes your parenting style. As a parent, you have to be aloof from the emotional entanglements of a child fulfilling you and validating you. Because if you're not, then your judgment's going to be based on, well, they're still going to like me if I make them do this, make them do that, and then they've got the power. And once they've got the power, they're going to do what they want to do.
What do you suggest to parents who are wanting to get that power back, wanting to get that control back?
Once you've lost it, it's hard to get back. But you can always remove yourself from the emotional entanglement. I'm not saying don't be emotional with your kids, because there's obvious strong emotions that are there, but you can't look to your relationship with your child to validate you, to make you feel like a good person.
And Captain Norwood was giving you some of those techniques a while ago.
Well, I guess in my situation, another question is just that I'm a good role model for my sisters, and my mother and my father are not. My father doesn't live with us anymore, but my mother is a really bad role model. So how could I emphasize my role model? My positiveness for them.
Overshadow a poor role model?
Without, because my mom feels like I'm taking all the control away from her, but then again, she doesn't act like an adult. So I guess either, I don't know how to,
there's a difference between control and being a role model. Control indicates that you're trying to manipulate some sort of behavior. Being a role model just means that you're showing what behavior you would like to see happen. And when if there's a control or a power struggle going on with you and your mom, then there's a problem to start with. And that problem may in fact be hers. You extricate yourself from the power struggle, not even be worried about control, and you're going to be a more effective leader for your siblings.
I'm wondering if my moving myself out of the situation, out of the home, would help any, because I don't know what to do. Because I'm at that point.
Not being familiar with your family is hard to say, but the key is to be able to get out of the power struggle. And that's the key in a whole lot of areas. If you can extricate yourself from this enmeshment, from being locked up where you can't go anywhere, then you have in fact gotten control of the situation, because you're no longer manipulated. And if your mom's manipulating you and you're getting into struggle for power, then that's where you need to focus as opposed to where your body sits.
Okay, let's shift for a minute. I know there's some listeners that are interested in children and lying, deception. They're elementary age children that tell enormous lies. Some have grown on to high school level and seem to be turning out to be constructive adults. But I've been in several conversations lately where the issue of deception and major fantasy construction, you see any problem with that? Does it lead anywhere? Do healthy as well as unhealthy kids tell whopper lies in elementary school and live?
I think all kids are going to, all people on every level are going to have a problem with deception. There's this need that we have to make, and this is one of the most basic needs, is to make you hear what you want to hear. Now, what you want to hear may involve me telling you something that's not necessarily true. Or it may involve me telling you something that is true, but just in a way that makes you think something that's different. So deception is a key here. If there's a pattern of deception that anybody gets into, particularly young kids and then teenagers, where this deception is ongoing and self-defeating, then it's a big problem. Kids that are fantasizing sometimes may make up things, and that's a whole lot different than trying to deceive you. Little kids all the time, my children come in and will tell me things that I know isn't true. And not necessarily for the purpose of deception, just because they're fanciful of a certain thing, they like this movie or that movie, or they see these things, and I think that's kind of healthy. That's an imagination, and the kids trying to differentiate between real and imaginary, and there's some concrete things that they're formulating in their thought processes that kind of have to happen. But certainly the older they get and when deception's involved, that's what you have to worry about. And if it's a marked departure from reality, well, and they insist, yes, the elephant comes into my room in the evening and eats my pillows,
but the repellent runs them off before you get here.
Yeah.
Ginger had a comment back here.
But repeated lies, a pattern of lies that aren't necessarily beneficial, where the truth would not get the child in trouble and lying does get the child in trouble, should the parent continue to stand firm and label the behavior as inappropriate and deliver consequences for that inappropriate behavior?
Can you give me an example? I think you have a specific example in mind, maybe.
I did all my homework. No, you didn't. I don't know. What are you thinking back there?
I can't think of just one. Okay, the driver of my bus smokes cigarettes and drinks beer while he's driving.
Okay. And how old is this child?
8.
8 years old. See, that's a different question for an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Right.
You know,
But answer it both ways.
an 8-year-old, you're looking at a kid that may just want to be heard. I mean, you
wouldn't
have
get the driver fired.
Well, yeah, the driver may be getting this kid in trouble. I want to get this guy fired, so I'll make something up on him. It may just be that nobody listens to him. You know, I can come home and tell you about playing on the playground. It's no big deal. But if I tell you about the driver, you're gonna hear me. And that behavior is not so much deceptive as it is attention seeking, and you see that corresponding behavior at every different age level. And that behavior of lying about the bus driver at age 8 may be stealing cigarettes at age 12 and breaking into houses at age 15. And so, yeah, it needs to be dealt with, and you need to find out exactly what that child hopes to gain from it. If the kid is just really just trying to get your attention as opposed to get the bus driver fired, I mean, you have some real bad implications to someone that's that young that can think far enough ahead to say, I'm going to hurt this person. And I'm going to hurt you is different than I want you to talk to me. Okay.
A group of kids drew straws to see which kid would tell the big lie.
This is a real example?
It's a real example. This
Okay.
really happened.
And this was the real lie about the bus
This was
driver?
the real lie.
Okay.
This was my son.
Was the bus driver riding the kids too hard? Was he an unpleasant person, or were they just really wanting to hurt anybody randomly?
He was just making them mind.
They had to sit down and fasten their seatbelt.
Okay. In that situation, I think it's important to deal with the bigger social issues, the bigger relational issues of how do you treat other people. You know, what if this bus driver had made some things up about you and you suffered for it? I mean, kind of put them in the spot where they have to understand it. Yeah, I think there's consequences if it keeps happening, and they should correspond to the problem that they're having. Number one, go talk to the bus driver and apologize for the lies. You know, I've put you at risk here. I'm really sorry, and that makes a big impact on a kid because they have to see this bus driver as a human being. And a lot of times they don't see him as a human being. He's a person making me mind. He's bossy. He's an authority figure.
He's in control.
Right. It may be that okay, if you can't do it on the bus, you're gonna have to walk to school, or you know, or whatever you can find that corresponds to the problem here. And it's not necessarily the line that's the problem as much as the reason that this untruth is wrong, and it's the underlying idea that I can hurt you if I make something up about you.
The lying is the problem. But I understand what you're saying. But that's just one incident, so.
Yeah. Well, it's a way to deal with other problems.
I'm just amazed at the number of grown men I have spoken with who said that in elementary school they told lies right and left regardless of the consequences because that's what they wanted to do. It gave them a sense of power and control, and they didn't care what their parents said or did. They lied through their teeth repeatedly because it was fun and they wanted to.
It can be extremely intoxicating. I mean, even recently on a popular TV show, man and wife went on vacation, and their whole deal once they got there was kind of boring, so they said, we'll just lie and make stuff up. And everywhere they went, they would be somebody else, and they would lie, and before long, their lies were catching up with them, and the tour guide came in and said, hey, you know, what's all this about? And the woman said, oh, my husband's just crazy. And so everybody treated this guy like he's crazy. I mean, there's something intoxicating about being someone you're not, about having the control to change the situation simply by what you say, and that's very hard to deal with. I mean, it's hard, especially for a younger child who can get caught up in something like that.
Jackie.
You can have well, okay, we'll say I have a child that's been working very well, very truthful, and then gets involved in high school in a peer group that tries to teach her how to lie. Oh, don't do that, say this, go here. Oh, you don't have to tell your mother this. That. I'm thankful she's scared to death. I'm a psychic, you know, and I follow her like a shadow. That's right. But how do you, and particularly I would think with gangs and similar situations, how do you convince a child that to pull away from the peer pressure? Because most of the peer pressure, I think, is what gets most of the children in trouble, because you can have a perfectly good family, but that peer pressure will really undermine everything.
You don't start teaching a child to pull away from peer pressure at 14 or 15 years old, first of all. Sounds like you've already done what you need to do. You've ingrained the system and the moral value of truth from day one, and when this child gets to be a teenager, when they start trying to take that away from her, or him or her, then they already know all the answers. They already have all that information behind them, and they're going to act according to what they've been taught. Now, they may step out of that every now and then when the sanctions hit them, they're going to step right back into line. When they see that, hey, this is what Mom always told me, and now it's happening to me.
Don't you think that that's one of the reasons why there's this gang pressure, the peer values, the peer pressure, the being accepted? How do you ever get them to pull out of that? Taking that away from my daughter, but I mean, well, generally speaking.
The allure of gangs is twofold. Number one, there's a camaraderie in real strong, true gang members. The initial thing that got gangs in the place where they are is there's a sense of camaraderie. It's us against them. You know, I don't have this family that I need to connect with, but I can get over here and we're all together. They're not going to take stuff away from us, be it the authorities, the other gangs, the mailman, whoever it is we perceive as the enemy. We're all together here. Okay, that's one facet. The other thing is that we've had a phenomenon in our society where gangs have been made tremendously popular by movies, television shows, music, and now you get kids that you can't tell who's a gang member because they all want to look like a gang member, and then they get offended when you accuse them of it. You know, they can dress. You can have two kids, one's a gang member, one's not, and it's like you say that.
Example.
Yeah, I mean they'll. And so it's like it's I don't want to say a fad and say that loosely because people are dying over this social trend, but it's almost the in thing to do to at least look like a gangster.
Nancy?
Where do you think that just plain old boredom, plays into kids getting in trouble? And do you think that sports, whatever sports or something that the kid likes is a way to help some of these kids?
She said to stay away from real controversial stuff, so I'm not going to really go out on a limb here. But there was some educational legislation.
We just don't want to be sued.
Well, I'll hint at a couple things. You can draw your own conclusions. But I think there's some educational legislation that has impacted our kids to the extent that there are kids that are expected to perform at a certain level that may be higher than they're capable of, or else sports is taken away, or whatever activity they would like to be involved in. And those fun things are very powerful motivators, not just socially, not just educationally, but also socially. The children that we have in common, I can't tell you how many of these kids are tremendous athletes. I mean, we're lucky that police ever catch them because they can run so fast and jump so high and are so strong. But number one, their behavior in the school has prohibited them. I mean, you don't get along good. You have problems in school, so you act out. Then that affects your grades, and then you can't be involved in sports. I can remember when I was a kid, that was what scared me the most, was my coaches. That kept me in line in school and kept me making good grades. Once you take that away, I would act probably like a lot of these kids act. And I think that a number of people that you talk to will tell you the same thing. I mean, I think that we've taken away, to a big extent, one of the motivators that gets our kids to act right. And something that these kids could be successful at has been just ripped away from them. I don't play sports, but, I can dunk behind my head out on the street corner in between drive-bys. I mean, get these kids involved in something in a good way.
I thought we're going to have to pause here. I think we've had a most informative evening. I personally am encouraged by the program that we've heard about tonight. I'm encouraged by the competency of these folks that we've talked with this evening. It makes me really encouraged to know that people of your caliber are doing the jobs that you're doing. So we thank you for your attention. We thank you, our guests, for coming, and we'll be back next week.